am here, Mr. Chairman.
Ah,
Thank
great,
you
great, great.
very much. Last but certainly not least. So I think we all recognize that after decades of neglect and underinvestment, the bipartisan infrastructure law is delivering billions in much needed new funding to strengthen our nation's transportation supply chain while improving our nation's competitiveness, lowering costs for American families, reducing emissions, and all the multiple policy objectives we had when we voted for the historic piece of legislation. This includes accelerating investment in our ports, waterways, and freight networks. So, Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you for your work to increase federal flexibilities for port grants. And we've talked about it over the phone, given some of the choke points that we've experienced in California. You've worked with us to fast track some port infrastructure grant awards and announce new construction projects for coastal navigation, inland waterways, and land ports of entry. So I wanted to start off by giving credit where credit is due and lead with a thank you. As you know, working with the governor and part of his team, California plays a central role in the movement of goods, not just locally or regionally, but throughout the United States. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach alone account for approximately 40% of the container traffic that enters the country. That's huge. And last October, the state of California, working with your office, the U.S. Department of Transportation, entered into an emerging projects agreement to help ease access to federal financing programs for nationally significant port and supply chain resilience infrastructure projects. And this January, just a month and a half ago, Governor Newsom's state budget proposal for the next fiscal year includes 1.2 billion for port and freight infrastructure projects, including, and this is intentional, to leverage federal grants provided by the bipartisan infrastructure law, as well as federal credit programs through the emerging projects agreement. So I know it's a long setup here, but the question is, given the state of California's proposed significant state funding contribution for the specific purpose of attracting federal investment through grants and financing, what can the Department of Transportation do to reward states, make that an incentive for states that are taking proactive steps and putting their own skin in the game?
Well, thank you for the question and for the conversations that we've had about just how important it is to do everything that we can to support goods movement and supply chains in this country. As you know, ports like those in California have such economic significance in terms of the volume that comes through them that you feel the impact of their success or their problems as far away as my Indiana hometown. And I think for that reason, it's been especially rewarding to see creative approaches taken like that emerging projects agreement. And we hope that there will be more where that came from as other states look at that example, effectively helping to fast track many of these credit programs that we think could make a difference when it comes to alleviating those supply chain issues. You also mentioned that California is a state that has acted already to put up a great deal of funding through an ambitious budget supporting transportation. I've seen similar things in Colorado, Illinois, and others. And I want to emphasize that, especially if anybody gets the wrong idea and thinks, why would we put up this state money when there's federal money coming? That states that choose to step up are putting themselves in an excellent position to take advantage of the federal funding that has been made possible by Congress and the administration. And I don't mean that in the sense of putting a thumb on the scale, but rather just as a clear fact that when you already have more investment ready to go into a local match or to make sure that a project can be done with whatever slice of it is being proposed for support from a discretionary program, that much more is going to be achieved in the state. And so I do think states that have taken those steps, that have taken the initiative to put up funding for infrastructure, will be especially well positioned to take advantage of this national vision for infrastructure development that the president is leading.
Great. I look forward to following up with you on not just the funding opportunities, but also the financing programs, including RIF, TIFIA, and others to reflect the same, incentivizing, rewarding states that are stepping up and willing to put skin in the game. I'll be brief with my next and final question, and that's just acknowledging the size of the agricultural industry in California, uh, including a lot of perishable crops and the supply chain issues that we've experienced for many, many months. I know you and Secretary Vilsack have teamed up to be responsive to those concerns, reaching out to carriers, doing everything possible to keep goods moving, not just on the import side, but especially the export side, which is critical to growers in California. Can you just make any brief comments on how it's going, any new ideas, how we can continue to work together with stakeholders?
Yes, thank you for the question, because while most of the coverage on supply chains has looked at things like electronics or clothing coming in from Asia, the export side is extremely important when it comes to our agricultural goods being able to get out. This is another area where collaborations have played an important role. I would note a partnership with the Port of Oakland, for example, to establish what we're calling a pop-up site or container yard, effectively a temporary site that helps ease congestion and keep those goods flowing, especially since, as you mentioned, they're often perishable or part of a cold chain. And so it's especially important that they flow promptly. We'd welcome more opportunities to think about how to add ways to make better use of the capacity we've had. I'll also say that suitability for agricultural exports is one way to be competitive with grants that are looking for economic impact on the discretionary side. And the guidance will make more clear how to appropriately speak to that. But I think it's certainly something worth considering for anyone proposing a supply chain related project.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. A lot to follow up on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator